Good morning, everyone. So I'll first start with how it came to be that I gave this sermon. Wait, can everyone hear me? I'm sorry, my voice is kind of small. But yeah, it's kind of funny because I think that Uncle Adja thought I was Alex Fortune. So maybe I kind of got a free pass to be on here. But yeah, really it was because I was actually going through a bit of a difficult time recently, or just not long ago. And sometimes you feel like maybe the lowest point in your life is kind of like where you're almost building the next level of foundations for your own personal growth. So it's almost like, you feel like your life is mobilizing because sometimes during tough times, you just want to kind of drop everything and just go. But actually, it's almost like a building stage. And that was when I kind of got the inspiration that, in this lowest point of my life, what can I offer to God? And that was to give a sermon. I think it kind of came to me because I know that my dad's been giving a lot of sermons when he was a missionary here. So maybe it's just in my blood to just come up, and that's just what I need to do. And maybe God was telling me that it's time for me to do something and to offer something. I think that we've all been in that low point in our life where we just don't feel good enough, or we just don't feel cut for the job. We might think negatively about ourselves and we just want to give up. And my personal experience came when I was in Korea in 2018. And I chose to go because I just felt like I wanted to go to the source. Being away from and learning about true parents and heavenly parent from a distant country, you have this desire to want to go that place this is the source, this is the birthplace. So I wanted to go and just experience what it's going to be like. But I think many of us who have gone to Korea have many different opinions about Cheonggyeong. We've all had our personal experiences, and one that stuck to me was the Chombo Training Center, and really realizing that it is a training ground. It's not somewhere that is comfortable. You're really pushed to experience things that you just don't experience in real life. So I was really hit with this amount of love and the excitement of being part of an amazing global family. And I'm forever proud to be able to say that I have friends from all over the globe. And in fact, you can be so inspired in church or after a workshop, but you have to really remember to stay grounded, and that what you feel and this high that you get is not exactly transferable into everyday life. So when I was there, towards the end, it was more of this feeling of being able to try to be the best for my lineage, and how much work I have to do for my lineage to be the best that I can be. So it was almost as if any small mistake that I made, it was kind of amplified. So if, for example, I spoke to somebody and it wasn't maybe in the nicest of tone, I was always reflecting. So me personally being an overthinker, it was already something on top of that I was overthinking. So it was almost just like these bricks was just building on my shoulders. And I just felt like I couldn't be who I was, because all the time I was thinking every small thing, or reflecting my actions of the day, I was always thinking, what did I do wrong? Or that wasn't right. That's not how I was supposed to think. It's not really the same in everyday life. Everything is busy. The hustle and bustle of life, you don't really think of, that person, or every person that you spoke to, you don't sit down and think, okay, this person I spoke to, how did I speak to them? Life moves so quickly. So sometimes I might have been internally frustrated towards someone within myself, and I knew that wasn't good. And I know that we're not born perfect. So we all have our own growth to go through. So that was almost like a growing stage, almost like giving birth to myself, that this is how I'm going to grow. But what I also thought is that maybe my experiences and why I found it so difficult there It's okay, and maybe it's what second gen have to go through, because really, sometimes when we think about it, first gen really had it rough. It's nothing compared to what I was experiencing was nothing compared to what they had to go through, to completely deny themselves, and in some cases leave their families. I think sometimes second gen don't realize how much first gen really went through to get themselves to this point and to get us to this point. Regardless of whether we agree with what they think or not, I'm sure some of us might not agree with everything our parents say, but there is a mountain of lifetime experiences that we cannot comprehend, but we have to respect. And after 2018, I guess coming back from Korea, I did some team leading out, some workshop and prayer, but mainly lived my life focusing on big worldly things like the direction in my career and my education. And I actually live most of my life, when I pray, I don't really pray to God for guidance. I usually pray to Him to invite Him in things that I do. And that has stuck with me until today. When I was in Korea, there was one lecturer who said that Heavenly Parent doesn't want to hear prayers of help. Normally there's, a lot of times we call to Him in our troubled times, ask Him, please, to help me in this. But how about what is the percentage of the prayers where we are calling out to Him to tell Him that we're going to set Him free from His sorrowful heart? Or when was the time where we said, Heavenly Parent, I invite you into what I'm doing? And those of you who know who I do, Olympic weightlifting, in my sport, I've actually started to implement that when I really feel like I'm not going to be able to do something, or I'm like, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make this lift, I normally set up to the bar, and I actually say in my head, Heavenly Parent, let's do this. Come and join me in what I'm doing. But then I began to really reflect and think deeply, piecing parts of my life together of what True Parents and Heavenly Parent really wants from me, after doing my exams. And so I did a lot of reading of His speeches on what God's love means, where does it come from, and where's its core. So I did a lot of prayer conditions. And there's this realization that there's this part of my life, this spiritual part of my life, that is just always going to be there. And I don't know, I just felt that it was a burden. Because no matter what I do, I know that there's always that part of my life that I have to achieve. I think some of I've remembered Father's words of saying, our life is good when you can set the standard and the example for not only your descendants to come, but for those who have left and your ancestors. So what example are you setting for your lineage, for them to follow? And if nobody is really living that life of living that standard, then who are they going to look to? So you might have your grandpa, grandfather, like how many generations before, and they're looking down at you and they're saying, well, this is the person you need to follow. But what are you doing every single day? So I just felt that it doesn't matter where I go, where I turn to, the spiritual aspect of my life, and knowing that it is a responsibility, I just somehow wanted it off, and I wanted it gone. And I'm not proud to say it, but I didn't want to be a second gen anymore. So just going back to me going to Korea, it was almost as if what I had envisioned before going was not what I had expected. What you may have envisioned something would look like in the beginning eventually doesn't show the colors you were expecting. Like, when you're a little girl, I don't know, for some who might have thought the same way, but the Disney princess that you saw is not the same princess that you realize actually exists in real life. And that's almost when, I guess, you first start to crumble, because you somehow have to find your footing again. I wish I had lived a life, I was wishing at that time, well, I was living a life that I was ignorant of it all, because it just looked so much simpler. I have a lot of friends, a lot of Christian friends actually, but because the decisions that they make, we can say that they kind of have a little bit more freedom. There's a lot of things that we have to do that is kind of set in stone in the principle. So in other words, you might even look at it as we have a lot of things that we can't do, and you go outside and you see a lot of people and they can do many things that you can't do. Or I could do it, but it has to be within these limits. So if I really wanted to live and breathe goodness, and to feel like I had to try and do that 24/7, even in my sleep, I almost felt like I was in a small room, like I had no escape. That even how hard things in my life are, that even in death, I can't escape God's love and principle. And we will have to eventually accept our course back to his principle, whatever position we're standing from. Whether it's living a life that is outside of the movement, inside of the movement, denying his existence, whatever position you want to put or whatever direction in life you want to take, we have to realize that no matter how much we are going to deviate from him, from Heavenly Parent's principle and his love, no matter how much we hurt him, we are worth it. Not because I am saying so, but because God has said so. We are worthy because God's love for us, because of what God's love for us. And he gave that worth to us. And unfortunately, his love is much greater than our suffering and mistakes. That he would rather suffer for it all, suffer to see us deviate from him, to realize our purpose of creation. Somehow, amongst the anger and pain of everything we're going through, during tough times when we are down and when we are really low, whilst others might see an escape, we need to live knowing there is none. Some would say knowing is not enough, because ultimately, when you feel like there's no escape, you just feel boxed, right? You're just trying to run away. You're just trying to think, I can go, I can leave, I can just live a life that's just not this. And for some people, there is comfort in knowing that, you know what, maybe at the other end, if I do leave this, at the other end, it might be okay. But for us, it's our responsibility to find comfort in knowing that there is no escape. So I'm sure many of us have gone through a stage where you just would rather drop it all and leave. But we stay because once you know the truth stays with you, whether you want to deny it or not. But if we can find comfort in knowing that this is the reality of life, we are better equipped to support each other. You don't need to feel alone when you're going through a tough time. And it's okay to feel that life is not going well at that time. But I think this is like almost the realization and the move forward, because when things were not going okay, the most support I really wanted was knowing that I can survive, knowing that there is no escape. So now I go on to talk about worth a bit more. And actually, it came from when I was watching, I don't know if you guys watched the movie, The Sword and the Stone. It's like a Disney film in like 1964. I'm not, that old, but I watched that movie. So just to give you a little bit of background, those who know, the tale. So King Uther Pendragon was the King of England, and when he died, he left a sword in a stone, and engraved on it said, "Whoso pulleth out this sword from this stone is right wise king born of all England." Merlin was a wizard, and he knew that there was a boy who was going to come, and he was going to be the next king of England. And Merlin's mission was to prepare him to become the next king of England. So he knew, Merlin knew that this boy Arthur, when he was about 11 or 12 years old, he was going to come into his home and land there, and he was going to prepare him. So I'm just going to skip through to the main points. So Merlin turned Arthur first into a fish to learn about upthrust, those who know physics. And then he turned him into a squirrel to learn about gravity, but also about love. During this lesson, Merlin and Arthur were both turned into squirrels. And so they're both male squirrels, right? And then on their journey of knowing how to fall, Merlin was telling Arthur you need to look before you jump, because squirrels jump from tree to tree. But then along this lesson that he was teaching him, there were two female squirrels, and they fell in love with them, but they were trying to say to them, "No, I'm not a squirrel, I'm an old man." That was what Merlin was saying, and Arthur was saying, "No, I'm a boy. You can't love me, I'm a real boy." And when Merlin then turned both themselves back into humans, those two female squirrels were so sad because whom they fell in love with were not real squirrels. And then when Merlin and Arthur had left the forest, Merlin laughed and he said, "That love business is a powerful thing." And then Arthur said, "Greater than gravity?" And Merlin replied, "Well, yes. In its way, yes. I'd say it's the greatest force on earth." And Arthur actually was living with a foster father called Ector, and he was a harsh man. He punished Arthur when he was late from his lessons with Merlin and made him clean all the dishes from the whole castle. So his last lesson was when Merlin turned Arthur into a sparrow. I don't know if some of you might know, Merlin had an owl called Archimedes. So there was a point because Merlin, he knew too much. He knew too much into the future. So he had to let Archimedes, the owl, take over, because Archimedes knew, no, you need to teach Arthur first and understand, the world is round, starting with simple things, because it was too much for Arthur to comprehend Merlin's, what Merlin could foresee in the future. So he was already ahead. And these lessons of when Merlin and Arthur were a sparrow and a fish, both lessons taught Arthur that knowledge and wisdom is the real power, not muscle, not how strong you are physically in order to become king. But then Arthur was called, so after all this teaching, Arthur was called to be a squire of his brother, and Merlin left out of the rage, because everything that he had taught, everything that Merlin taught Arthur was that knowledge and wisdom comes first. It's the most important. But becoming a squire is just using your muscle, using your body. So Merlin left, and he actually went to Bermuda, which at the time people didn't know existed. So he was like, "I'm going to Bermuda," and flew away, and poof, he went away. But then during that time, when Merlin was away, Arthur pulled the sword out of the stone, and he became king. But what I took from this is that throughout the movie, Merlin knew that Arthur's potential, even when Arthur didn't realize how worthy he was. He referred to himself as a nobody. But Merlin knew he was a somebody. It was from that point when Arthur pulled the sword from the stone that he realized what Merlin had envisioned for him was true. Though he felt ill-prepared for the responsibilities of being king, he was prepared to walk beside Merlin, whom was to assist him in becoming the great king he foresaw him to be. Because when Merlin had left to go to Bermuda, Arthur cried out when he became king. He said, "Merlin, I need you." So what lessons can we take from this? So the first is realizing that there's no escape from the truth, no matter how far we want to deviate it. It's almost like fate. Arthur could not escape from the fact that he was the chosen one to pull that sword out of the stone. There was actually a time when Benny gave a talk, I can't remember when, and he mentioned that the first step to take an understanding why I'm alive, or why do I exist and who am I, is to realize that I am alive. And then you take your next steps from there. In the same way, we need to acknowledge that the life we live is governed by the truth, and it is a path that has heavenly parent and true parents built in it. Second is that without understanding our worth and our position in the world, we can't fulfill God's purpose. When we have to hold God's hand tightly, and we need to trust that wherever He may lead us through rocky and smooth times, that the destination we can't quite see clearly is a great one. Just like when Arthur called to Merlin when he was appointed king and shouted, "Merlin, I need you." It's almost like saying to God, "I'm here, I'm ready to take on this journey with you." For the second gen, the last words of True Father before he went into hospitalization, these were his last words. "You must keep yourselves, and as God's representatives, do your utmost best to fulfill His purpose. I am deeply regretful that the responsibility is handed over to you." What makes this journey difficult? Pastor mentioned last Sunday that the bus we are heading towards, or the drivers of the bus are like true parents, and they're heading towards a destination. So it made me think, what is really this destination? And it came to me that this destination is towards an ideal that manifests in an ideal world. True parents may know each stop. They possibly might know every single stop on that journey, on that bus. But why we're finding so hard to live and to stay on that bus is because as members of this movement, we are trying to realize an ideal in a non-ideal world. And not only that, we are still trying to realize an ideal life. So that brought me on to unity. One of the words from the national leaders in Korea, he actually said to me this, which has stuck to me for a while. There is unity in diversity. It made me think about this gap which we talk about between first and second gen. So in the beginning, growing up, I always read Father's words and his speeches where he mentioned that young people always talk about this difference between generations. Children, for us young ones, we always say, "You don't understand us because you're just not living in the same time as us. Things have changed. It's not the same. It's not the same mom. It's not the same dad as what you lived through from before. But it's true, yes. The first and second gen are probably going to be the widest in gap in difference, because first gen came from a place that second gen didn't. But there was a speech that I read in Those Who Want to Know, New Hope 12 Talks, where one of Father's speeches says, one age, one generation. So I'm just going to read something from that. You may have a reasonably happy life, but what about your offspring? The world is getting more and more wicked. What makes you sure that your children will live even as good a life as you do? It's very obvious that the next generation will suffer more than we have unless something is done. We are in a historical time that only comes once. Are we only superficially happy, or are we grateful enough to try continually to understand more and more deeply? So what I got from this was, I was just thinking that we are only the beginning, right? Think about Adam and Eve, they were the start. And it's almost the same as us. First gen are almost the same. It's almost like Adam and Eve, starting again. So there's many more generations to come. Still many, many more. This is just first and second. So how can we really unite the two? Because really, there are many differences between us, and I think there's no doubt that we can all see that sometimes we're really rocky, because second gen might not understand what first gen sees, and first gens will see, well, this is the way, because they were the pioneers. So that's what brought me with that point of there is unity in diversity. Because even though we might be different, even though we come from different places, there is still an opportunity to unite. In Father's words, he said, unity comes first before love. And it's not unity where the children listen, and that is one side. Okay, I'll just listen. Mom and dad, I'm just going to listen to what you want me to do. And parents say, yes, that's it. Unity is meeting at a point in the middle. So yes, there is a time, when it's going on where we talk about this heart of Hyojong. And as children, we need to have an utmost devotion and heart to our parents. There's no denying that. But for me anyways, Hyojong is not just a child thing. It is not just the child who is giving utmost devotion, to their parent. It is the coming to this middle point. I've had some experiences actually recently. I don't know, some of you who might know my dad. He's quite a tough person. He's going to really stand his ground when he says that this is what I've told you. But what made me really proud of him is recently, anyways, as a family, but I think coming more from him a lot, is that he is trying to meet in this middle. We're all imperfect. We all have our fallen nature that we can still work on. But there was so much unity and love that I felt when I explained to my dad, but Dad, you know when you did this, how about if you did it this way? And they said, oh, you know what, Alex, okay. That's true. We don't have to feel that there is this big difference in our parents and in us. As True Father said, it's one age and one generation. And I think that now, when really we're trying to find our footing and when we're trying to head towards this ideal in an ideal life, it's really important that we can unite. Unite not just as second gen and just as first gen, but the coming of the two, meeting in the middle. Maybe we are the two extremes. If you think about it, first gen came from outside of the church. They had to go through something out to get in. But second gen are already in. So coming from two opposite ends is why it's difficult in this moment in time, because we have to meet at a middle. So it's at this middle point that I feel whenever we're going through a tough time, whenever we feel that life is just getting too much and we just want to escape, it's at this middle point that we can feel this comfort that I was talking about in knowing that there's no escape. When you feel that you're not alone, when you can feel that there is people who are supporting you at this middle, when you are united with your parents, with true parents, with Heavenly Parent, whoever you feel most connected to or unified with, then this feeling of no escape, almost being like a burden, can be something which is comforting. And it can get us through these rocky times and those rocky paths on that bus that is taking us to an ideal in an ideal world. Thank you very much.